Right, we're going to tackle texturing using Mr. Finishing Surfacer. This is the 1500 black. So I've not shooken this up or anything. I'm going to agitate it in a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to brush it on and then we're going to use a sponge to give it some texture. That's the basic idea, at least. So I used to shake up to agitate Mr. Surfacer, and then I realised that actually what was happening was I was sealing it and I was struggling to get the top off sometimes. So these days I just give it a good stir, and what I find is the brush that I'm using, obviously it'll all set and go hard and what have you. You don't need to throw it out. When you come to mix it again, it'll all come back to life. So we'll give it a good stir. I could go in with my paint mixer. Okay, so using the brush, we're just going to paint a bit on the areas that we want. There we go. And then using a sponge, you'll see we've created texture. So all I'm doing is going over the top of it and pressing the sponge down. Now, I've used this technique for things like tank turrets and stuff like that, and I think it works quite well. Okay, I'm just going to do this back section now. Okay, we can leave that to dry. Distributor. Just going to sand down the tops, and what that does, other than just obviously shortening them and leveling them, is it gives you a wider platform for drilling these out so we can attach wires. Now this is off-center the moulding, so you can see the edges overlap more on one side than the other. I'm thinking about cutting this off and repositioning it, which might be tricky, but I think I've got to do it. I think I've absolutely got to do it. So to help me with that, just going to embed it into some blue tack. Just to keep it steady. I have got my finger on it still as well, but it's not going to roll around as much with the blue tack. Actually need to have it that way up. Then I can use that as an alignment. Now, if you're one of those people that when you're sawing, you end up cutting it into a wedge, let me show you how you avoid doing that. When you're cutting, don't look at the side of your blade. Look at the top of your blade, the top edge. This is actually a tip from when I was a butcher. Cutting steaks, you don't want them wedge shaped either. If you look at the top of the blade, your knife stays straight. If you try and look at the side, what happens is your hand moves over, and that's when you cut a wedge shape. Right, I think we are nearly done, and you can see how that is nice and straight. It's because I was looking at the top. So like I say, when you try and look at what you're cutting and cutting off, you're going to move your hand, because your whole shoulder and your elbow and everything moves over. So I just need to get something hard to cut on, because I want to cut onto my table cover. Nearly there. There we go. Right. Now we can glue that back on, but make it more centralized, so you've got the same level of overhang all the way around. So let me put some glue on that. That looks better because it's central. That's much better. Okay, so a quick job. Don't be daunted by these little tasks. They're all going to improve the finished look of this. Right, so we're going to let that dry because we've got to drill those holes out next. So I need to get a clamp to hold that in place. Right, we need to drill out the top of the distributor cap to accept the cables we're going to put in. So I've got a 0.45 drill bit in the drill, which is wide enough, I think, to accept the copper wire that I'm planning to use. I'm using copper wire rather than lead wire because it's just easier to keep it in shape when you've got it into shape. So I'm going to drill them out. Now they've been flattened off, that should be easier, but what I am going to do is just get my awl and mark a centre point. So I'm just going to put a little centre point in to help the drill not wander when we first go in. It's also helping me understand whether I've got this in place okay or not. I think what we'll have to do is just move this around a little bit as we're drilling it, so that it doesn't wobble around. I don't want to clamp it any tighter because the soft plastic will just start to deform, and we've got to make sure that we go in a straight line. So I'm just going to reposition this a little bit so you can see what's going on better, and so can I think that's okay for you and me. Let's just have a look. Yeah, so I've got this on the slowest setting, which is 5,000 RPM. Just going to get rid of all those bits of fluffy. That seems to be okay. It's right on the limit of what it'll take. I also need to do a centre one. So I'll just mark that with the awl too. So that's our distributor all drilled out now. I'm just going to test fit my wire. Perfect. So all we need, it doesn't have to be too deep, it only needs to be able to hold the wire, that's all. Now obviously we've also got to think about the fact that these go into the engine block, so we need to also drill out the centres of all of those. So whilst we've got the drill bit out and we know it's the right size and everything's going to plan, let's have a look at that. So same process as before. I'm just going to check that none of these are going to fall off, that I'd managed to glue them on properly, and that seems to be the case. So I'm just going to centre mark with our awl again. The white plastic card is quite soft, so it's easy to mark. I think I need a bigger impression on that. There we go, and then we can drill those out for the wires as well. Now the difference here is I have drilled all the way through the plastic, and that's deliberately done because unlike the distributor, which is the starting point, it's a location point and we just need it to hold the wire in place, I can have the wire too long and then push it down into there, and not only will it hold it, but it can take excess wire. So I can have the wire oversized, just making sure that, yeah, that one didn't quite, I don't think that one went all the way through for some reason. I thought it had, and then it maybe got filled up with swarth because it was the last one. Yeah, that's all good. Right, so I'll do that one to the other block off camera. Okay, I think we can now glue this on. So this will all get painted in the same orange that we paint the whole block in. Okay. So I also think we can now put these on, because these will also be orange. I'm not planning to have chrome rocker tops or anything like that. Just take you out a bit, and then I'm less likely to take the camera out of view. Okay. And that goes on there. Yeah, so let's glue that in place. Okay, that's looking good. And then finally we can put this in. There we go, it's starting to look like an engine now. So, next part of the engine that I need to consider, although we won't be attaching it until after painted, is the fan belt. So we've got this part, and we have this part here which has got a copper coil in it which goes on there. Now ordinarily I would want to completely remove the fan belt and have the three separate parts cleaned up, installed, and then wrap a belt on it that's nice and thin. The problem is this part is completely floating in air. When we attach that, it's, you know, there's nothing actually attached to it, which can't be right, but I don't know how it is properly attached on the actual vehicle. It's very difficult to find images of the vehicle and how these things are attached, because most of them are sat in the engine bay and you can't see underneath. I have watched a couple of engine install videos and still you just don't get a good enough view. So I'm sort of leaning to I cannot take the fan belt off, but it's thick and it's chunky, So what are we going to do? Well, I can't thin it down from the outside because that would change the diameter of the wheel here, which is, you know, completely circular and correct, both at the top and the bottom. So that leaves me with thinning out from the inside. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to thin this by about half, if I can, in situ. So we can do some of that fairly quickly with a file. Some of it we're going to have to scrape out very carefully with a knife. So I think first thing to do is rough it out as much as we can. So let's get a file. Okay, so what we're going to do is thin this out. I've got my little file here. This is a diamond cut file, so it's quite abrasive and should take this down fairly quickly. So I'm trying to keep the file flat and the part flat so that we're taking it down nice and square. There is abrasive on the edge of this, so we have to be careful we don't take anything away from the two wheels that this thing goes around. But yeah, we can see that's already starting to take that down. We don't want to take it all the way down at the roughing stage. We want to get it about right. So you can see how that's already considerably thinner than that. And you can see that little slope on each end. That's the amount we've taken out. Okay. And then what we can do is just carefully go in and put the definition back in, put the shape of the wheel back in using our knife. And then I'm just going to use the back of the knife to scrape that nice and smooth, which will also reduce it down a little bit more. Just going to go around the back and tidy that up. Now, because the back won't get seen, doesn't matter if we round the edge off just to make sure it's looking tidy. Okay, so that's looking good on that bottom wheel now, and that looks so much better. So we can just do the same at the top. A little bit more delicate now, but we follow the line with the knife and follow the curve and get the two parts to meet. Make sure it's nice and tidy. There, and that looks so much better. I think you'll agree. And we've not lost the structural integrity of the part, so we'll be able to put that part on. So I'm going to carry on just tidying up, making sure everything looks smooth and correct. This will be the hardest part here. So rather than we can't get a file in there. We're just going to carve it out with the knife. But because we're between two thick bits of plastic, it's quite stable, so it'll allow us to do that without too much problems. So we'll just pare it back to where we think we want it. And it'll also have the added benefit of widening the gap and making it look like two separate parts and not a plastic part. It's not quite round because it's a little bit misshapen. There we go. So what we've got to do now is get the same sort of thickness. You can't have it different thicknesses in different areas, so it's got to look like what it is, a continuous belt. I think we're nearly there. Scrape that nice and smooth. Make sure that wheel is nice and smooth too. Okay, that's also looking a lot better now, I think. I'm just going to get rid of the fluffies in there and crisping it up so I can get a proper view of what that's looking like. Nearly there. So whilst that plastic has got glue on it, you can shape it just by gently pressing. Because the surface is soft, I can shape it. There we go. So we'll just let that dry and then we can pass over it again. So I'll do this off camera because it's the same process as the upper one, but I will show you what it looks like when it's done. Right, that is done. I think that looks much better. Looks much more in keeping with the thickness of a timing belt. So when we mount that on the front of our engine, we get some focus. There we go. It looks more delicate, and therefore it looks more intricate and more realistic. So, I did have it on before. There we go, maybe there. There we go. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it works. And we'll get that on there. And that goes onto there like that. So we're not bad. So the engine is ready for priming. This part is ready for priming. The Dizzy is nearly ready for priming. What I want to do is just go round and take it down a little bit. You saw I was struggling there to get it on. It's a little bit wide. So we're just going to take it down a little bit. There we go. And then I'm just going to go back over it again with a sponge. Blend it all in. And hopefully that'll look nice and tidy under paint. There we go. We'll prime it and see what that comes out like. This is a little untidy on the back. We've got 3 ejector pin marks. So we just want to trim those out and make them disappear. So it's nice and easy job. Just cut them away with my knife blade there. I'm going to have to sharpen my knife blade after all this carving of plastic. There we go. I'm going to make sure that we are nice and smooth on the back. This will also need to be painted separately before it goes on. It's not orange. It's a cast silver alloy. Silver coloured alloy. Quite a dull silver actually. But we also need to show off the copper coil that's in there as well. So my thought process is we'll paint the inside of this in copper and then we can capture that a little bit on the outside as well. So that is also ready for priming. So last thing on the engine is the fan. So my fan is short shot and pretty ugly. I can't find an aftermarket fan for a replacement of this, and a fan's quite a complex thing to have to do and make yourself. So I've been umming and ahhing about it, and I think what I've got is one decent blade. The other 3 are all shorter. So I've got one decent blade that I could use potentially as a blade to make copies of replacements. And I've been umming and ahhing, do I do this from plastic card? Do I do it from metal sheet of some type? You know, what does that look like? And actually, does the blade that I'm gonna copy look any good anyway? You know, that's another question to answer. So, I mean, it looks like an original 60s sort of engine fan to me. So the question is, what to do about it? I think the answer is to try and make another complete fan. And I think my starting point is plastic card. So let's have a go. So first thing I want to do is have a go at making a blade. So if that's my good blade, let's see if I can make a blade easily or not. So I just need to get my pencil. And we'll start by just drawing round it. And then we can cut that out. So now we've got to put the twist in it. So I'm thinking probably, I don't know, round nose pliers maybe. As I'm going for the round nose pliers, I remember I've got this, which is a photo etch roller, and that's probably going to do the job because we can put that, it's much narrower than the round nose pliers. So we can attempt to bend that round. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad, does it? Plastic card's thin enough to sort of hold the shape. It springs back a little bit, so you overfold it slightly. That's not too bad. Okay. I think it's going to be possible to make one out of plastic card. It's going to be fiddly, it's going to be time consuming, but it's absolutely going to be possible. So that is my play. Let's see if we can make an engine fan. So with that in mind, I need something big enough, which looks like this. That's the same thickness as the fan blade we just made. So what I'm going to do is get myself a little clamp. I think, yeah, that was the one that we said was okay. So we draw around that one first. That's giving me the rough positions, and then I'm going to use we know this is the good size blade, and draw around that in each one of those 4 positions. There we go. So that, in theory, is about right. Just wondering as I look at that, is it better for me to just do 4 individual blades, cut these blades off and glue these ones on? I think it might be, in which case I only need 3. Yeah, I think we'll put that to one side just in case, and I think we'll make 3. So if we cut those out, that one seems a bit wide, is that right? Must have slipped somehow. Just follow the curve there. I'm using Tamiya scissors for this job. They're actually designed for cutting thin plastic. Okay, they still need cleaning up, but let's remove one. There you go, we are committed. Okay. Sound that back into a circle. I'm just going to, I flattened it to use it as a template, so I'm just going to put the bend back in. And what we could do is put a little support strip on the back just to help hold it in place. So if I cut a little strip like that, glue it on the back of the part here. So let's just get that wet with glue, prop that on. Make sure that's nice and flat and in line, yeah. And then we can put a little bit of glue on that. So I'm going to cut the other 3 off, glue them on, and then we'll have a look at what we want to do. Probably put a bigger disc behind it or something like that, fill the gap in a bit.
Whilst I'm not in a position to be priming all of the kit yet, I am in a position to be priming some bits. So the bits that I can do, whilst I've got the airbrush out for another project, I might as well do. So we're going to use black in the main for interior and engine parts. We'll use grey on the exterior because it's slightly better at showing imperfections, which will be really important around the areas we've reworked, like the front of the front quarters and so on. So yeah, I'm going to prime everything I can, really.
Right then, time for the first prime on the bodywork. This is all about finding faults and issues, so most of this primer is going to end up coming off, inevitably, not all of it, but the vast majority of it. So this is just about giving it a coat for working with rather than priming for paint, if that makes sense. So I'm using Kaleido acrylic primer, the matte black one, and only because I've been using it for something else as well. We could have gone with grey, not a problem. And I'm using my Mobius TG with a 0.5 needle and the wide angle nozzle. So let's see how we get on. Okay, that's all primed up. We're going to let that dry for a couple of days and then we can start sanding it and seeing where our high spots, our low spots are, and looking at where we've got any imperfections that are still showing. So where I've done sanding, have I got it perfectly smooth, or do I still need to do some work? That sort of stuff.
So here we have one engine. It's been primed in black, which has equalised all the colours, because we had black and we had white and we had some of this shiny stuff from stripping the chrome. So what we've done is, after we've finished all our work, is we've primed it in black so that we've got one standard colour all over. And now we need to start putting the engine colour on, and the engine colour is orange, and we're gonna use this orange for that. And that's right, we are going to use a marker pen. I'm interested to see how well this goes. So it will need, I reckon, about 3 coats. When we put it on, it should get darker every time, but we will see. And we need to do this now before we start adding more bits, such as manifolds and bits and pieces. So the first coat is inevitably going to look a little bit scruffy, and should tidy itself up by the time we've put the next 2 coats on. I'm expecting 3, but it may take more. What you can see is you can cover this thing in paint with a marker as quickly as you can with a paintbrush. Now in the kit these were chrome, these rocker covers, but what I've seen on most images of engines of the time is they were generally painted. So people doing a General Lee mock car now might put chrome fittings on and stuff because it all looks nice and cool and what have you, but actually on the cars used in the show, that wasn't really the case. Why would they do that? You know, you're not going to see the engine, so unless the engine's part of the story, you'd have no reason to see it. And of course there were so many different cars used as a General Lee, you'd have to start messing around all the time. So yeah, it was all stock engines and what have you, and different engines all the time. And of course the sound effects, you know, the engine noises you hear, they're actually dubbed on, and legend has it that they were actually came from the film Bullet. So there's a famous chase scene which has a Dodge Charger in it, and the people who dubbed the engine noises onto Bullet used the same soundtrack to dub the General Lee. So you never actually hear the car particularly, I can't say never, but you know, when you hear it straining and racing, that's all dubbed in sound, which explains why we sometimes get skidding tyres on dirt tracks. So pretty much all of this will be orange, not the carburettor there on the top. We'll do that in a different colour in a minute. But we need to get in and paint all that orange first, which is a little tricky, but it is doable. It's fairly quick drying, this stuff as well, so by the time we've gone all the way over, where we first put paint down will be dry and we can probably put a second coat on. Second coat, I find, tends to dry a little bit more slowly, so then you've really got to leave it and come back to it after a period of drying, maybe an hour or so. It doesn't matter if we get anything on the casting, because we'll just paint over it, but I'm going to try not to. So I'll be the first to admit it doesn't look great right now, but bear with me. I think you will see that it will improve as we go. I'm not sure about the colour of these parts, so I'm going to do them orange, and then we can always go over them with a different colour if we need to. You can see how easy this is. Quite therapeutic in a way. I'm guessing that's the oil filter or something there, so we'll definitely do that a different colour. I don't know whether I want to do the sump in the orange or not, to be honest. So I just had a quick look, and doing the sump in orange would be the right thing to do. Okay, well, that's the first coat down. Man, it looks pretty rough. In fact, it looks worse on camera. Now I'm looking at the camera screen, it looks worse on camera than it actually does in real life. Gonna give that a minute or two just to dry off, and then I'll come back and give it a second coat, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished and dried.
Engine's shaping up nicely. I'm using aluminium on this cast case here, and I think that's going to come up looking really quite good. I want to have slightly different colour on this next box, just for a little bit of variation. I have given this a clear coat. It's had a polyurethane satin varnish, the Vallejo product. It's just working out where one part finishes and another part starts. But we can put a little bit of a dark wash on, which will help define areas. So I'm quite happy with that aluminium. So I'm gonna go with a gunmetal for this next section. So you can see the difference in colours, subtle, but it's definitely there. It's got a slightly more oily look to it actually. Really starting to bring the detail out now, we're getting some colour on. Okay, that looks pretty cool. So I'm going to go back to the aluminium for this end piece. So there we go. I've just noticed I've missed a bit on the gunmetal. I'll go and come back to that. But you can see the contrast between the colours just helps give you a feel that it's all different components, which of course it would have been in real life. So just touch up that bit of gunmetal, and then I'm going to leave that to dry, and then I need to do a bit of research on the colours for these other bits on the front here. What I can do though is do the black and grey on the top. So I've got a flat black, which is perfect for these caps here. Steady hand required. There we go, that looks okay. One thing I've noticed is missing from the engine is the coil. I think the coil sits about here, from what I can see from pictures and bits of video I've seen of the engine, but there's definitely no coil included in the kit. Right. Okay, I think that's the oil filter, so I'm probably going to do that blue or something, or white or something like that, I don't know. But these need to be grey, so I just need to find a colour I'm happy with. I'm going with a dark grey. We'll see how it ends up coming out.
Well, that looks okay.
Right then, happy with that. I know that's a bit of hose, and we're going to have to extend it, so I might not do anything with that. Let's, I'm not sure how good the white is. I've got a feeling it's not brilliant. Nothing lost from having a go though. It's probably not the oil filter and I've got it completely wrong, and then when I go and have a look at an engine in a minute I'll realise and have to go over it with someone else, but it doesn't really matter, does it? If I have got it right and it is an oil filter, then all good. If it is an oil filter, then we'll perhaps put a little blue stripe or something on it.